and start. All right, so welcome everybody, all the brave souls who are here in person and the less brave but still stalwart people who zoomed in. So thanks to all of you. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is now 5:31 and we'll determine our quorum. So Diane Becker here, Denise Davis here, Chris Wood here, Roxana Dunn here. Anybody online? I think we're waiting for Mark, but I know that Carla and Kevin are not going to be here tonight. All right. So let's open with the Pledge of Allegiance. And let's have our gentleman here nearest the flag lead us. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. All right, we will open with general public comment. Is there anybody in the room that wants to give general public comment? All right, anyone online? Rhonda Tyser.
I would like to suggest a possible reason for the dwindling participation at our Incline CAB meetings and other Washoe County meetings. We citizens have recognized it does not matter what we say to Washoe County, TRPA, or other agencies. We are ignored, dismissed, or worse, demeaned if we disagree with their big agendas. For instance, in June 2023, Heidi Hill Drum of the Tahoe Prosperity Center presented to the Incline CAB the TPC housing roadmap that TRPA and Washoe County intended to use to make housing decisions for Incline Village. Many Incline residents attended that meeting to protest the big agenda to build 4 or 5-story buildings in our town center. After the CAB meeting, Ms. Drum wrote Linda Offerdahl of the Washoe Tahoe Housing Partnership Group, "I am sad to say I have never been treated so negatively in a public meeting. The majority of public commenters were rude and clearly uninformed." Quote, "The Tahoe Prosperity Center will not be doing further community engagement work on this." Quote, "I can guarantee you that Ann Nichols, Rhonda Tyser, Ellie Waller, and team will all be there again to beat up our work." Ms. Offerdahl responded to her email, quote, "Perhaps the 2010 survey data should have been brought up to date with the new 2020 census data." And she asked Ms. Drum, is it possible to do so? Ms. Drum replied, quote, "It is a lot of work to update data, and redoing the needs assessment data with one more year of population does not make a statistical difference in our findings," unquote, which is of course complete nonsense and simply showed she did not understand what she was talking about. But as I said, I had already laboriously for free updated the roadmap data using 2020 census data and sent the new analyses to TPC, TRPA, and Washoe County for their use. They could compare the report's conclusions based on 2010 census data with conclusions using the 2020 census data and see the difference for themselves. Ms. Drum went on, quote, "Despite Rhonda's insistence, it was a statistically valid survey, despite her opinion. To me, Rhonda, Sarah, Diane, and Pamela are just using the data to diminish our work," unquote. Quote, "I don't feel the need to go to the forum to respond since they have clearly made up their minds, and no matter how many times I tell Rhonda our data is valid, she says it is not," unquote. I contend this example is emblematic of the dismissive and demeaning behavior by Washoe County and its affiliates, and may be the most obvious reason Incline residents no longer bother to give public input.
Thank you, Rhonda. And I hope I'm not out of order, but could I ask that you submit those comments to the CAB Reimagined if you have not already planned to do so?
I certainly will.
Okay, and you can contact me if you don't know how to do that, but
Okay,
you
I'll get them to
should have
you.
received an invitation and it has it in the agenda. Okay. Actually, I wrote it down. Let me just share it with you quickly. Never mind, I can't find it. Okay, I'll do that offline. All right, no more public comment. All right, let's go to the next item, which is
I
announcements from.
actually did have a public comment.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, Kathy, you just appeared.
I'm
Um,
sorry. It was, Kathy Julian for the record.
Yes.
You know, that's an interesting email that's an interesting email that Rhonda read. And I have to admit, I was actually one of the people copied on that email because I was part of a housing committee that worked with the TPC in the county on housing solutions and things like that. When I received that email as being copied on it, I was actually very disappointed in the response from TPC because I attended that CAB meeting and I listened to the community. And, you know, people weren't being overly rude or awful to people. I think there was community frustration, and I feel like TPC needs to have I'm going to say a bit of a thicker skin if they wish to work with the community in Incline Village, because we do have very intelligent, educated people who have strong feelings about their community. And that's good because they're part and parcel of this community. They're not just second homeowners. So I was a little disappointed in the frustration that TPC expressed. And also I will note that we have to people who work with the county on some of these solutions, we need to make a better effort to bring in the community at an earlier stage so that they don't feel like they've been left out of the conversation before survey results are out or before reports are written. We just have to make a better effort to expand that circle of people who are involved. And I think there are people in the community who do wish to do that. I know Chris Wood is working on housing, as well as myself, with Linda Oferdell and other people in the community. And I think we all need to make a real good effort to expand the circle of people who communicate on these issues at an earlier level or an earlier stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Pam Sigdinos.
Hi, Roxana. I just joined the meeting and I'd like to just underscore what both Rhonda and Kathy said. We love our community and very much want our opinions to be expressed in a way that is meaningful and respectful, and we would love that to be returned in kind. I wanted to know, Rhonda, if it was too soon to just do a general public comment, or if the public safety is a better place to talk about the recent fire on the Tomahawk Trail neighborhood.
I assume the public safety would be the better spot. No,
Okay,
ma'am.
I'll hold my public
right.
comment for that then. Thank you.
I'm overridden by someone younger and wiser. So go ahead and make that comment now, Pam.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure who's playing music, but it's very nice. I just wanted to make note that a week ago Sunday, we happened to be driving down Skiway on our way home from the Big Grill restaurant and Big Water Grill, and ran into what was a blocked off road, and made the decision it must be a car accident. So we drove into the neighborhood and inadvertently found ourselves right in front of a fire truck putting out a house fire. So I was just curious to know, what are the protocols at night at this time when unexpected wildfire season presents itself with a house fire, and would love to know from the public safety folks, were there sheriffs on site? Because we ended up in a cul-de-sac and we were unable to leave, and we did not want to impinge on the firefighters' work. It was a really unexpected public safety emergency. So I would love to get a little understanding from the folks when they have their updates on how traffic is directed in neighborhoods when there is an unexpected fire and people are already on the roads. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam. All right, and hopefully our public safety guys will be able to handle that here in a few minutes. Our next agenda item is an update from Commissioner Hill. Commissioner Hill is not available for us tonight, but Alexandra said that she has messages, so please deal with that, Alexandra.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alexandra Wilson with the Washoe County Manager's Office and Commission Support Team. So in speaking with Chair Hill today, she just had the one update, just letting people know about the Washoe Tahoe Academy, which we had done a networking event for, but that will be opening here in the new year, so probably January, February. So just keep an eye out on that. For individuals that are interested in being a part of the Washoe Tahoe Academy, please sign up for our District 1 email subscription list. I believe most of you guys are signed up for that, but if you have any issues or if you are not sure, please reach out to me, and I can drop my email address in the chat so we can get you signed up. But that is the only update that I have. I will also provide an update on neighborhood development meetings, which I do have some on that as well.
I'm sorry, what was the last update?
I have other updates, but they're on the neighborhood development.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Roxana Dunn for the record, and just wanted to give you a little input. Alexandra, I ran into a guy at a holiday party this week who is new to the area and had found out about the academy and thought it was really great. So a little positive there, and we may need to encourage more people, especially if they're new to the area, to attend that. All right, number 5 on the agenda is our safety patrol updates. Public safety updates. Safety patrol is a little younger. Let's start with who have we got? I saw the Galicia, Captain Galicia. Why don't we start with you? Galicia. Okay, I'm working on it. Okay.
Oh.
You need to unmute.
Good evening. I could not get in on the Zoom link that I had, so I apologize for my delay.
Let me ask you this before you start. Did you hear Pam Sigdino's story?
No, I just got in about 30 seconds ago. I haven't heard anything.
Well, go ahead and give your update, and then we'll ask Pam to repeat it for you.
Okay.
Or perhaps, I'm sorry, I don't know who's a sergeant and who's a whatever, but the other two who were here, maybe they can address it. So go ahead, Captain Galicia. And Galicia, oh, okay, I'll make myself flashcards. Go ahead. Thank
It's all
you.
right. I just have a few quick updates for Incline Village from our November 2024 stats. Our big 5 offenses up in Incline Village, we saw an increase in 2 of them, grand theft autos and residential burgs. It's not disparagingly alarming. In 2024, in the month of November, we had 2 grand theft autos. So those are stolen vehicles. That's up over our 3-year average of 0. So we went from 0 for our 3-year average to 2 in the month of November. The other one that saw an increase was residential burglaries. Those were also up for the month of November, with a total of 1 that was taken in the Incline Village area over our 3-year average of 0. However, our vehicle burglaries were down for the month of November. So that is a positive take away from our big 5 offenses. We had 0 in the month of November. Our 3-year average is 1, and we've averaged about 1 or 2 every month of November for the last 3 years. Like we've mentioned the last several CAB meetings, Incline Village has been identified as a dedicated DUI enforcement area. If you've noticed, we should be having an increased patrol during or within that area to target DUI enforcement, as well as decrease our traffic-related crashes. So if you see a heightened presence of our deputies along the streets and roadways, that is the reason for that. In terms of our overall population in the jail, what's noteworthy because we have a decrease in our jail population for the month of November as opposed to the previous 3 months. This also is reflective in a decrease in our overall 911 calls for service, disturbances, suspicious subjects, suspicious people, unwanted subjects throughout the county, not just in Incline Village, but that's overall within the Washoe County's jurisdiction. The Sheriff's Office recently participated in the Candy Cane Village, which was on December 7th, last Saturday. Well, not last, but the Saturday before. That was a success. We had a lot of fun up there in that event. So hopefully some of you were able to come out and talk with some of our deputies and supervisors that were at that event. Outside of that, that's kind of what I have for you guys tonight, unless there's any questions that I can answer.
Okay, we would like an answer on the questions that Pam Sigdinos asked. So can I ask the officers that were here for that to respond?
Absolutely. I think Lieutenant Avina should be on the meeting, and I'm not sure who else is.
Yes, he is. So
hello, for the record, Lieutenant Armando Avina, Patrol Lieutenant on currently right now. I do have a guest today. It's been very popular. I've been bringing her to some of the cabs I've been coming to. It's our mobile outreach safety team. We just call her MOST for short, Jessica McGahee. She's going to give a quick rundown as to what services that MOST provides. It's been a relationship that was established a few years ago, and she is part of this team. The mobile outreach safety team communicates with us, whether through email or by telephone, all days. And it's been a tremendous success. They do ride with a patrolman. They will never go out on their own, but they do provide a lot of follow-up through phone calls. Those are some things that they can do from the office, whether it's emailing back or making phone calls. And I will let her, do a quick introduction here in a second. But as far as the question, I do recall, I was trying to get all set up as well. The question was regarding a structure fire and roads being blocked off. Was that correct?
correct.
I think it was if Pamela could state what it was, but it was a much broader question. It was what are the procedures that we can expect in the future, since she ended up stuck basically behind a fire line because we aren't aware of what we're supposed to be doing. So what are the procedures when there's a house fire for the sheriff?
When there is a house fire, when our patrolmen get called to assist fire, that is their duty, is to be sure that those fire lines are able to lay down their hoses, that there's no traffic coming through. Those are extremely heavy. It does tend to block driveways when they have to lay that down. They will go to the closest fire hydrant or source of water they can. But I have also heard of some of them going, an extended amount of time. Our deputies are responsible for blocking traffic so fire can control and work without interruption. So as you can imagine, When a house fire comes up, there's sometimes if it's in a court, there's one way in. If it's in a street that has two-way direction, that's going to require additional resources, and we must be able to block traffic. As I don't recall when that call specifically came on, but if it's during the day, yes, we are going to see much more traffic. It is going to be an inconvenience to the public because they're stuck without being able to go anywhere. At nighttime, when there's less traffic, it doesn't seem to be as inconvenient for our public. But when we get called to assist fire, our priority is to have their safety and to provide them enough space to work and lay down their hoses to whichever direction they are fighting that fire.
This is Diane Becker. I think that maybe you missed the first part of her comment. There was no one telling them not to go in that direction. So and
Can you
maybe
say your name for the record?
She did.
She did.
She did. Okay. Sorry, I didn't catch it.
yeah,
Sorry about
that's
that.
okay. So perhaps, and I'm sorry that she's probably dropped off from.
Actually, no, I'm still here. I can very quickly
Ask your
recap.
question. Ask your question.
Right.
So-
So I was driving down Skiway, returning from a dinner. It was at about 9 p.m. and we saw lights flashing in front of us that indicated Skiway Road was closed. So assuming it was just a car accident, our intent was to not come upon the car accident. We drove into the neighborhood and inadvertently drove to the fire because nobody had blocked Tomahawk Trail. So our intent was to stay away and not cause a problem, but there was nobody to indicate that the road we were moving on was actually where the structure fire was. So it was kind of terrifying to realize we had put ourselves in a position to be a problem when there was nobody to tell us not to go down that road.
Great. Thank you for your question. What day was that?
It was a Sunday night at 9 p.m. and it was a week ago yesterday from that. It was a clear night. There was no indication that anything was wrong. But as I said, we managed to be in the worst possible situation. And of course, the firemen were busy putting out the fire, but we could not turn around. And so that road ended up becoming a circular problem because anyone who was trying to get out couldn't. And we did not want to put ourselves or the fire folks in harm's way.
No, I mean, great. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I just took a quick look at my calendar. That was the Sunday that I was off. Normally, I would be the watch commander that evening. When a lieutenant off, the duties do fall on the sergeant. That is a different team that is working. Myself and Captain Galisa can follow up and see the details of that call. With her being on, I would like to pass it over to her and see if she has anything additional to provide you with that information.
Yeah, without being able to look up that specific call for service, Pamela, I'm not able to give you a super comprehensive answer, but I will say this. Sometimes the deputies that we have assigned to Incline are only 2. And if they weren't on scene yet, or if fire had requested them at different locations, then that would explain why perhaps that road hadn't been closed because they were determined that they needed them at a different spot. But without actually looking into the call and pulling it up, I can speculate. There's a lot of scenarios that could have happened, or that might be the reason for why that was, in terms of why you were able to drive down Tomahawk. But I don't have the specific details without doing more research. Sometimes we only have 2 deputies in Incline Village. So if there's a more critical, or not critical, but a larger scale incident with multiple avenues and streets that need to be closed, fire will determine the most appropriate and most highly trafficked routes, and they'll let us know where they need us. So perhaps that's part of the reason why you were able to get down there.
Well, thank you. And in fact, I was one of 3 cars because TART Connect was in front of us. We had somebody else behind us. So it was not just 1 car. 3 of us ended up on scene, which was a little terrifying because then we couldn't back up. So again, I'm not faulting anybody. I just wanted to bring it to your attention simply because it was a completely unexpected fire drill, if you will. Thank you.
Is there anybody from fire on this meeting tonight?
Don't look like they're here.
Okay, that I would like to kind of, you know, get their input as well, since a fire related call is going to be more of their immediate jurisdiction than it is ours. We're kind of a secondary response. But I can look into it and get you additional information.
All right,
Thank you
I'd
so
like
much.
to, Roxana for the record, and I would like to ask this question that Kathy Julian has put in the chat, and that is, yes, no. Is it a policy for North Lake Tahoe Fire District to call the county sheriff's office to manage traffic for house fires? That is normally the policy?
I can't speak to what their policy is. I can tell you that when dispatch receives a fire-related call for service, they will typically dispatch police and fire. But I don't know what North Lake Tahoe Fire's policy states. If it states something different, I can't speak to that. Sometimes, depending on our call volume at the sheriff's office, if our deputies are on higher related priority calls for service and we don't have a unit available, they'll advise us that fire is responding to some type of fire call and its location. And when we are able to break free from our other priority calls, we will then also respond and see where we can be of assistance.
Okay, thank you. Roxana Den again, and we will move on now to item number 6, which is the Tahoe Transportation Plan. I did see that Dave Solaro has joined us. Dave is the Assistant County Manager. Oh, you've joined us
In the back and online.
Wow. I don't know how to do the statistics on this for my attendance sheet, but anyway, thank you. Dave is the Assistant County Manager. As you know, I think for the last month, he's actually been serving as the county manager. He and I talked about the transportation plan, and in particular, he has expressed a desire to get our input on priorities for the projects in the coming year. There is a series of projects that are on the books right now. I'll put this one out here if you guys want to get to it, but in any case. All right, so Dave, thank you. That was an awkward introduction.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Dave Solaro, Assistant County Manager. So I just wanted to give a fairly quick overview of the Tahoe Transportation Plan that was updated in 2023 for this area. And then we'll break into, as the chair mentioned, a list of kind of priority buckets that we've got within the plan. And I'll explain what that looks like and kind of get some feedback from you all. Really, this is part of the Washoe County Strategic Plan. This is, I like to tie everything we're doing into, the guise of the strategic plan that the Washoe County Commission has set. And so this specifically, the Tahoe Transportation Plan, fits underneath the economic impacts portion of the plan. And it's really about meeting the needs of our growing community. So just wanted to kind of ground us all there to begin with. So the Washoe County Transportation Plan really built upon work that had been done in the Tahoe Basin, not just in Incline Village, Washoe County, but all kind of throughout the basin. So there are various plans, TRPA, Placer County's got plans. I mean, you can imagine quite a few different plans throughout the basin. We wanted to make sure that the information that we were providing to the community and the input we were getting from the community related to the improving safety and expanding connectivity, talking about the mobility and kind of parking issues, and then really just strengthen the vitality of Incline Village. We wanted to make sure that we weren't working against any of the other plans in the basin as well. So part of the process we went through was really to understand how those other plans fit in with our plan, how it fits in with the area plan, all of the different plans that are available. We wanted to make something that was useful to the community. So this Citizens Advisory Board actually played the role of the steering committee for our planning process when we did this. We hired a consultant parametrics. If you'll remember, Amy Cummings came up here quite a few times, either in person or virtually. We met with the CAB on April 4th, June 6th, and again, November 16th in 2022 to both present the information that we'd gotten through online surveys or in-person meetings or online meetings, get some feedback from you all so that we can make the plan better. Now that the plan has been accepted by the Board of County Commissioners, I've spent about the last year making sure that the items within our plan are within the necessary other Tahoe plans so that we can seek funding. So a lot of the times you'll go for a grant request and you'll see, is this contemplated in whether it's the regional transportation plan or the active transportation plan or any of NDOT's planning or the federal transportation improvement plan. We've got to be a part of that before the funding will even be considered for some of these items that we want to do. So I'm pretty sure we're in all of those things. We're in the draft regional transportation plan right now. That's kind of the process. Some of the bigger projects that are within our plan are all listed and nested in there. So really what what I would like to gather from you all as an extension of that steering committee is assistance on prioritizing some of the buckets within the plan. When you look at the plan, there are an awful lot of action steps that need to be done. And we broke them up into near term, midterm, and long term. And here in a moment, I'll put that list up, give you an update of kind of where we're at with it. But as you can imagine, a lot of the work we do at the county, a lot of the work focused across the community, we also need to help prioritize ourselves which things are most important for the community. There are a lot of action steps within this plan. And if I just tried to do a little bit of every one of those action steps, we really wouldn't accomplish much. And so I'd like to get some information from you all. If you're comfortable doing it tonight, or certainly in the future, you can send me an email. But I'm really looking for, do we want to focus on the State Route 28 improvements? Do we want to talk about bus stop improvements, the multi-use path connectivity? Winter maintenance is a little bit of a different one, just because that's budget driven, more so than some of the grant driven type things. We can't go out and get a grant for maintenance activities. But certainly there is some discussion in the plan about local intersections and which intersections are most important for the community. Transit service and parking. We've been providing some information and trying to assist through the Main Street program, specifically some work with NDOT along SR 28 and the roundabout at the Melrose Highway. And then there's a little section in there on technology and data needs. We've been working through some things, so I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to go to the list. Bear with me for one moment. Here. So this is the exhibit in the back of the plan, and I can try to blow this up for everybody here. Let me see. This has the buckets that I just spoke about. So for instance, State Route 28 intersection improvements, the traffic signal timing improvements, that's actually something that's ongoing. We get questions from the community, and RTC actually does the traffic signal timing. So if there's an issue with too long of pedestrian timing during the year, or too short for pedestrians, we like to have RTC come up and do some work there. They did quite a bit of work last summer. I think we had it fairly well worked out. I didn't hear any complaints or issues with traffic signal timing as far as, trying to get traffic through town and take care of the pedestrians as well. But if you know of any, please let me know. Then we've got the crosswalk restriping. This is an ongoing item. Now, when NDOT did their work on State Route 28 last year, they actually recessed some of the traffic or the crosswalk locations, and so the paint lasts a little bit longer. We're not scraping it off with the plows. We actually applied for a grant to do that for all of the crosswalks in Incline Village on county roads and NDOT. We did not get that grant. but we're going to continue to work through that. Anytime that there's new paving or anything going on up here, I've asked the engineers to make sure that we recess any of the striping that's going to occur just because it lasts longer. Obviously, there's some traffic signal replacements that are in there. There's work being done at SR 28 and Pinion. So the intersection analysis has been done by NDOT. They've also done that again at State Route 28 and Southwood Northwood on the east end. So this is the one all the way on the east side. So they've done their condition analysis of those intersections. There are some recommendations in there. We're just pending the NDOT kind of process. Where do those get scheduled? So really along State Route 28, I would say that, you know, most of the work that's being done there is actually in process of some form or fashion, whether it's NDOT or Washoe County working through some of those items. One thing I'd like to understand though from the community is we had identified a bunch of things with bus stop improvements. And so we've gotten some data from TART and from TTD on the numbers of people utilizing the bus stops. We also had a recommendation in there to create an actual, you know, more ADA compliant bus pads, and we want to make sure we're hitting the right ones. And so we were going to look at the data on who's using the bus stops and how many, and go through that. But I'm just curious from the community whether bus stops are a priority for you all or not at some point. So that's one of the areas. We've got a big grouping here of bus stops, some work to be done around bus stops, but I want to make sure that we're focusing on the, you know, the priorities of the community. The other piece are the multi-use path connectivity. So these are a lot of the ones that are in the active transportation plan with TRPA. It'll allow us to get some funding for some of these things. Just trying to make sure that we get more of a walkable, bikeable community for you all up here. And I know that's we're going to get to that at some point with the bikes and other things. But we've got a list of different sections of the multi-use path system that were prioritized through the process. But again, I want to talk, you know, are the paths more important than bus stops at this point, or are bus stops more important than paths, as an example? And then as we get down, again, I talked about winter maintenance, and I was happy to see that the paths around the school were plowed at some point this weekend, which is pretty cool because normally we wait until we're done with all the streets and everything else. So I'm going to follow up with our crew and say, hey, did you guys get out there and do that? Or are we on the right path here? Or was that some private citizen that decided I'm just going to go out and do it? I have no idea. I didn't follow up with them, but I wanted to see when I came down here, because normally we start with the paths that lead to the school after we're done with doing the plowing on the roadways. So that's generally the way we've done it. And that again is driven by resources available to the roads crew up here. And so we like to get to the roads first to make sure that the emergency services can get to everybody's homes. But we also know that people like to be able to utilize the pathways in the wintertime, especially kids going to school. And so that's been a discussion point in Incline Village for at least the last 7 or 8 years that I can remember being actively involved in trying to figure out winter operations that meet the safety needs of the community on both ends, whether it's car safety or pedestrian safety. So we're kind of stuck with the way the budgeting is set up right now. A lot of that is based around fuel tax. So that's where the majority of the funding comes from for our roads operation is basically fuel tax. We get a little bit from the general fund to cover the administration of that fund because we can't take that out of fuel tax, but that's where the majority of that money comes from. So winter maintenance is a little bit of an outlier in this plan. We've also got all the local intersections. So where the businesses come off of 28 and cross either the path on one side and in, it's very difficult to understand where there's a pathway and where there's a driveway. And so we've got some options in the plan to make those more robust. So you really see them more, I think more like crosswalks across all of those entrances. Also discussions around whether we need that many entrances. And I think that's going to play into the Main Street conversation at some point as we move along. And then we've also got transit services and parking. We understand that there are some issues with parking and kind of what do we do with that. So we've been working with TRPA, TTD and others, NDOT, just to really understand kind of what's available out there. Chair Hill has provided through the county, lobbied for additional funding. So we've funded micro transit for fiscal year 23, 24, and 25. And so you've got those services up here. I haven't seen the data as far as who's actually utilizing those services, whether they're residents or whether they're visitors. I'm sure I could get that information from TNT TMA, but I have not done that. And then we've got the Main Street program piece. We've provided some information and some connections with the Main Street group to NDOT to make sure we can get some of their planning that they'd like to do around the roundabout and some of the landscaping and things they're taking care of. And then we're always chasing grant funding for technology and data needs so that we understand, the number of people that are in the basin, the traffic that's where they're headed, what they're doing, so we can provide the services appropriately. One of the things we really want to do is get some more community-wide Wi-Fi and broadband so that we can alert people when parking lots are full and direct them other locations to help ease some of that congestion. So that's really my update to you all on the transportation plan. I know you've got a lot of things on your agenda tonight, talking Tahoe area plan as well, but I'd love to have any feedback, Ms. Chair, if you have any feedback on those buckets that are listed. And I can go back to that part of the presentation if you'd like to have that up on the screen.
All right, thank you, Dave. I think probably the best way to organize this is to just keep everybody to one comment, but you can specify which of the topics you're addressing the most, and you can address more than one, but we have to keep it down to 3 minutes. So the topics that I have that I wrote down, so double check me here, Dave. Buses, or bus stops particularly. Oh, okay, perfect. All right, it's already up there, so I don't have to go through that again. All right, we'll start with the cab, and let's try to keep it to one comment per person. So does anyone on the cab want to address any of this? Okay, Chris?
Thank you, Chris Wood, Cab, thank you. And all these are interesting topics, but all I know is what I see here on this chart. And it's hard to say, oh, that's a priority when, for instance, you were talking about Wi-Fi and technology, increasing that and so that people can communicate better, in emergencies or whatever. I mean, that suddenly sounded much more interesting to me than just what it looks like on paper. Something. And then you were talking about data that would support or be helpful to flesh out some of the subjects. So again, I don't have that. So it's not easy for somebody like me. Maybe others have more passion about this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so maybe, just a really high level, not necessarily the specific projects that are within those lists, but for instance, are bus stops more important to the community than the paths? Just a way for us to be able to prioritize which grants we go after, because limited resources, right? We want to make sure we get the right ones.
But that brings up a point that's right on point for me, and that is the data about the bus stop usage, who's using it, how many. That would be important to me. I mean, I don't use the bus, but I'm just one person, and that might be really important to the community. So that's the sort of data I was referring to.
Thank you.
Okay. Denise?
Denise Davis, Cab. What is your timeline for this? When are you wanting feedback on this?
I would love feedback whenever something strikes you, quite frankly. We are working through the process of trying to identify grants to go after and those types of things. But it would be really helpful if, by, I would say, April of next year, if I had a pretty comprehensive, like the community really is focusing on, roadway improvements, or the community would like you to focus on pathway improvements. That kind of information would really help me go after the right grants, because we've got limited numbers of project management to be able to get these things on the ground. And so, generally kind of that April timeframe is when things start to open up for us to be able to apply for those and get through there. I also say that because I'm pretty sure that the draft transportation plan from TRPA is going to be, approved sometime around, that first quarter of next year, I believe. Don't hold me to that, but it's sometime around there.
Right.
Denise Davis
Diane Beck.
again, is there do you want people to send these comments to you directly, or is there a committee, or?
To
How
me
should-
directly,
Okay.
my email is there on the screen, dsolero@washoucounty.gov.
Diane Becker?
Good evening, Diane Becker. Thank you so much for coming, Dave. When I looked at this list, I think what struck me was there are a number of issues on here that are very important to the community that we talk about a lot. And there are a number of issues that are very important to TARPA that are either the community doesn't agree with, or the community would rather not at least be spending Washoe County money on them. Especially when TARPA has so much money that it's getting from the feds right now. So I would suggest that as a community, like we did on recommendations for fire safety, that maybe we start having some meetings and we get together a community-wide list at some of the CAB meetings, as well as each of us can send you our own thoughts. But when I looked at this, I want to say my major thoughts were the broadband and connectivity. Since, I think you've gotten, there are certain areas that didn't have any, and the county found it within its budget. You didn't go out, I don't think, for grants. But, I don't know if it was Gerlach or I remember. That would be so helpful also for fire safety, because I think we've reported back to the county on several occasions that, for instance, T-Mobile and some of the Wi-Fi services went out. So we didn't even know it was happening during the fire. So if you looked at this as a more global protection, that is probably going to be in some ways, one of the first things that would be great to look at for the next budget. The other thing is the snow removal issue it's a significant issue for the children in the high school and the middle school. And I say that I have no children up here, so I have no skin in the game, except for every child I see when I drive down Village every day when it's snowing. And it is wonderful when they walk on the paths, and it is terrifying to see them walking in the street. So I mean, although maybe that's not the most important thing in terms of accidents, I don't know, but it's the most horrible thing that we can do because they're children. And I'm going to send you a very detailed letter because I have a lot of thoughts, but I don't want to take all the time talking. Thank you so much for coming and listening.
Okay. Mark, do you have your hand up? All right, then I'm going to go ahead and go. So Roxana Dunn, for the record. I would like to put in a pitch for doing something to make it safer for bicycles around here and for bicycles to be safer also. So we've had a real upsurge in the number of bicycles because of the introduction of e-bikes, and we have several shops that rent e-bikes. There are 5 intersections that you can use to get across 28 from the north to the south or vice versa. I've done all 5 of them on my bicycle, and 4 of them are terrifying, okay? Pinon, you have well, I won't go into details, but there's no signal or anything, pays your money, takes your chances. Northwood and Village, Northwood West and Village, both have traffic lights, but there are narrow streets for for cars and bicycles. If you're on a bicycle and you're to the right, you stand a good chance of getting run over. And then my unfavorite is Northwood, Southwood East, where the streets are whoppy-jawed. They don't go straight across. There are pedestrian cross lights, but if you are inside of that, you don't know whether they came on or not. If you're on a bicycle, you have to completely contort your direction and everything to get over to the button to push it. And I've had numerous occasions where I never push the button. I'm just gonna do it on my own. And somebody will stop and wave me across and I'm going, no, because the guy behind you may not stop. So very dangerous intersection there. Lakeshore is better because it does have a light, but it's way at the end. Anyway, with the increasing number of bicycles and tourists on bicycles, I would like to see better bike lanes and that sort of thing. As far as pedestrian safety is concerned, this is probably not something you can directly address, but we have too many driveways on 28 and everybody who is walking or riding a bicycle along 28 faces getting killed 39 times by the various driveways and intersections. And finally, on maintenance, just a simple suggestion here. It's great that the schools got plowed. I noticed that the path along 28 did not get plowed in this last storm. I would suggest that over the Christmas holiday, when the schools are closed, the priority be given to 28, because I have seen pedestrians out in the street when there was barely enough street left for 2 cars to pass. I'll try to, it's not going to happen until January, but I'll try to put some things together and send them to you also. Thank you so much for being here to ask us these things.
Absolutely. One other quick thing, if I may.
Okay.
Since you brought it up, for the record, Dave Solero, one of the other things that we've got in the pipeline for this upcoming summer season is to do a pilot bike boulevard along Lakeshore. I know that's been a big concern of trying to get the bicycles off the pathway. So I've got the engineers looking at it right now. I'm pretty sure they're going to be reaching out to the sheriff's office because, one of the issues becomes you do that and then there's an expectation of enforcement and what does that mean and how does that get there? But we're certainly reviewing that piece there as well. So I think that will be an eye opener for us to understand, not only, can we get the bikes off the path safely? But when we put them in the travel lanes, do they operate safely or do they cause different problems? So
Roxana Dunn, again, thank you for that. I look forward to that. When I'm riding my bicycle along Lakewood, I do not ride on the path. It's too narrow and it's bumpy and it's just not great for a bicycle. When I'm in the street, I feel like the cars kind of go, there's a bike path over there. Why aren't you in it? So having a more designated thing would be great. All right, that's it from the cab. Let's go out. What a surprise. Helen Neff has a comment on public safety here.
Okay, 3 minutes, ring the bell, because I know I'm gonna take all my time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping us and for requesting our input. Did I say my name? Helen Neff, yes. Okay, so I have a question first. The draft regional transportation plan, is that Connections 2050 or something else?
I don't know what they're calling it, quite frankly.
Okay, I think it's Connections 2050. Okay, NDOT did the signal improvements on 28. They did not put in leading pedestrian intervals. We've talked about that. I will send you a note on that. The F-tip, which was approved for Incline Village, has no projects within our village. It has the bike path from Crystal Bay to Incline Village and the bike path below and the mobility hub, but nothing that's going to benefit the local residents of Incline Village, just FYI. So bus stops, I think it would make sense to look at Connections 2050, because if that's implemented, it affects where bus stops go and which ones need to be improved. The TRPA Active Transportation Plan talks about improvements on State Route 28. It does not address pathways within Incline Village, the ones that are not finished. Path maintenance, thank you, Roxana, for your comments. Saturday, Sundays on State Route 28 and Northwood, Southwood are important. This past weekend, people were walking 4 abreast on Northwood by Club Tahoe. That's tourists. They need to be helped as well, even if it's just the sheriff telling them to walk single file. Okay, local intersections and roadways. The request that we talked to Amy Cummins about for Village Boulevard at Southwood and Village Boulevard at Northwood were safety improvements, not the pathways. We had requested those intersections we looked at specifically, very simple, a 4-way stop. We have incredible speeding on Village, and the signs you see out by the high school where they're asking people to slow down, just confirm that. I mean, they have put up big banners and signs up and down. So a four-way stop would slow the traffic coming up and down Village in both of those locations and help the middle school and the high school and not be as expensive as a roundabout. Do I have more time? Okay.
Alexandra?
Thank you. It might, if I could just throw one more thing out, it just might, I know we did a workshop with the transportation plan where, you know, you put Post-its up and dots and that type of thing. Just to get bigger feedback from the community, it might be an idea of something to do again, now that we have specific projects. Thank you.
Okay. And please state your name for the record, and you are aware you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Elise Fett and I'm an engineer, and thank you for being here. With respect to the multi-use paths, we have e-bikes. E-bikes are a great way to get traffic off of the road, either both in the sense of people commuting, not just within the area of town here, trying to get to school, et cetera, but between Incline Village and Kings Beach. And we need specific bike paths that do not have walkers in them. Because the e-bikes now are going so fast, it's not safe for anybody to be mixed use anymore. So the mixed use trails do not work anymore truly for e-bikes to work for commuting, which would be great win-win-win for the communities here. So if we could get a e-bike path that's 8 foot wide that would take emergency vehicles and get it from the end of Lake Shore on the west side over to Crystal Bay, we would help a lot of people. I can give you picture after picture after picture. I live in Crystal Bay. I can't have my child ride to school in the summer or because it is not safe. And so we need bike paths, not multi-use paths, connectivity anymore. That just is an old term at this point with e-bikes. Yeah. I have a friend who can't move her arm who lives here in town because she got hit by an e-bike. She was on a bike going the opposite direction. We need wider, safer bike paths. With respect to students, I will send you picture after picture, and it is extremely scary, like all of us. It is horrifying. And I saw a boy with a backpack that was running in the middle of school of the road. He could slip and fall. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Okay.
Fine.
And folks online, we will go to you as soon as we finished with people in the room.
Robert Lober, Lober, Crystal Bay resident. So we have a son at the Incline High School. I think everybody's talked enough about already. We need to get these paths plowed so kids aren't walking on the street. But the second thing is on the entrance exit of the high school on the north entrance exit, it is extremely dangerous. There's a curve in the road. I know they have a mirror up there on the other side. But what happens is the path on that side, on the west side of the road, same side as the high school, goes up fairly steep. And that somehow that needs to be knocked down for a little ways because when you're there trying to pull out onto Village, you can't see anything and cars come flying around that. So I don't think the mirror works better at night probably, but I don't think it's effective. It's just too small. If there was a way to knock down that path a little bit so we had a little visibility, it's only a matter of time before someone gets whacked there or there's an accident. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the room? Okay, let's go online then. Rhonda Tyser.
I'd just like to point out that Mr. Solaro skipped over the item on the PowerPoint presentation of the Incline Mobility Hub, which put me on high alert. We are all aware that Commissioner Hill has made it her mission to build a mobility hub in Incline Village. regardless of community sentiment or our years of public input. And we as a community have made it crystal clear that we will protest a large parking lot anywhere in the village that brings constant excess traffic into and through the village, especially in the summer. We have given Washoe County input for nearly 6 years. It has been consistent and clear. The community does not want and will not allow a large parking lot or a bus hub at the old elementary school site. You know this, Commissioner Hill knows this, HDR knows this, TTD knows this, and we are all on high alert whenever the bus hub topic appears on any list. I repeat for the record tonight, we as a community will not agree to a bus hub and large parking lot at the old Incline Elementary School site. We hope to work with Washoe County on a hub that satisfies a need without sacrificing our village. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Julian.
Thank you. Fully support what Rhonda has said about a large parking lot for tourist traffic at the old elementary school site. In terms of, I put a few questions in the chat, which I would hope that perhaps Dave could address sometime today. And thank you very much for coming and explaining this to us. On the issue of, on one of these questions, I support the idea that we do need some data, and it would be helpful if we can get NDOT to be more forthcoming with their public data on traffic counts. And specifically, I'd be interested in the traffic count between Sand Harbor and the entry to Lakeshore Boulevard, so we can see the number of people coming in from that direction if that doesn't already exist. Further, I'm wondering about, is on the list the consideration that we could possibly lower the speed limit as you come into town? It goes from 45 to 35, but it seems to me if we could get people going to 35 a little sooner, that might help with some of the issues at the intersection of Northwood and Southwood on the east side of the village. Finally, it would be helpful to understand a bit more when they talk about the Main Street program, exactly what are you speaking of there right now? So it would be helpful if you could just elaborate a little bit more on some of the thoughts there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Neil Jones.
Yes, thank you. Parks Commissioner Neil Jones for the record. I agree with a number of the comments from some of the speakers regarding traffic in and around Incline Village. My primary concern, because I walk it every day, is Southwood and Incline Village. That is a two-way stop at a four-way intersection. I was nearly involved in an accident. I had just crossed the street when the accident occurred. It is very unsafe. A number of people that I have spoke with consider that the most dangerous intersection in Incline Village.
Oh.
And another point regarding plowing on the multipaths along Southwood. As president of my homeowner association, many times I have seen where the path isn't cleared for literally 2 to 3 weeks after a snowstorm, and children and pedestrians, not bicycles, I haven't seen those yet, but children walking to school, to the middle school, and pedestrians are out in the street. This is horrifically dangerous. It just it absolutely cannot continue. We have got to figure out some way to get the plows out, not only on the path, but some of the piles of snow are actually in the traveled way. I'm not quite sure why that's happening, but the piles of snow in some of the associations are actually not only covering the multipath, but they're actually out into the highway. And I would think that would be a serious consideration for the road department. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kathy, you've already spoken once, so your hand needs to go down. Let me come back. Diane Becker would like to add one more thing here.
I did have a question, and I guess Rhonda's question really raised this for me. Could you give us any update on what's happening on the mobility hub project and where it stands now?
Well, sure, Dave Solero for the record. I didn't mean to gloss over it, but the last time I was here at the cab, Jim was here as well from TTD, and you gave them a lot of input. And so I didn't feel that I needed to provide any additional to that, because I think that was, provided to TTD. I quite frankly do not know what the actual, progress of that process is, but I do vividly remember the information that we received from the cab and the citizens at that meeting, because I was here as well.
I recall that there was floating around some kind of a map that showed a parking lot proposed at where one of the bike paths are coming in. Is it down by the?
I can, Roxana, for the record, I can speak to that. I have actually a copy of the plans that were submitted anonymously by somebody. Plans for a parking lot on 28 just south of Sweetwater, which for the residents is the sanitation area there, waste management offices. And it is, by my count, looking at the plans, it adds 44 parking places. When I got it, I thought it might be a preliminary plan for the mobility, one of the possible mobility hub sites, but there's no bus lanes, there's no restrooms, there's nothing that would indicate this is anything other than 44 more parking places. It's a long hike to the start of the East Shore Trail. It's a long hike to the commercial area across from the college there. So the only thing that I think it could be for is bicyclists who drive into town to then ride their bicycles, which is not exactly riding your bicycle to save vehicle miles traveled. So I don't know what that's for. I have no idea. It was actually a question I had for Commissioner Hill, and she's not here tonight. That's what we're talking about. Do you know anything about that?
I do not, but I will certainly contact TTD and find out what I can.
Okay, thank you. Chris Wood?
Well, I wasn't finished.
Oh, Diane, it's
Sorry.
not finished.
I'm sorry, Diane Becker. Could we ask that you maybe just get back to Roxana and then she can advise us? Because one of the things that I'm gonna write to you, but it basically talks about when you're setting up anything that you're looking at, if you're leaving to TARPA to start looking at parking outside of the basin, TARPA is always going to go with TTD, and they're primarily looking at bringing more parking up here. And the smartest thing for the environment, the best thing for traffic congestion, and the best thing for at least our community would be if Washoe County itself really, works and concentrates on having parking outside of the basin, especially Washoe County. You can do that from Washoe County, and maybe encouraging your fellow counties that are down below to have parking down there. Roxanne and I think that is a parking lot for these new bike paths, because we said, well, you can't just put these bike paths in because people are going to drive up here and park their bikes. So if we bring people up here in cars, that's wrong. But I have been, and all of the people, anyone who bikes knows, at many of the national parks, they have buses that are specially made. So they have these nice places where the bikes can go on them, and maybe there's an extra charge for that, obviously. But somehow we need you to be creative. And I know you really care. So to be creative, to figure out how do we get people parking outside, coming up here so they can enjoy the beauty and getting around the lake. Thank you.
Okay, I'm violating the rules, but Helen Neff is apoplectic over here.
Helen Neff. So the TRPA Connections 2050 plan, which has not yet been approved, talks about around the lake transit, with transit coming from population centers around and the parking being in population centers. It is in contrary to the TTD short-term transit plan, which is also in the approval process. I did write to Commissioner Hill about the differences in the two plans, and to her credit, she has asked TRPA to explain the different entities, and that will be on Wednesday's TRPA meeting, the Transportation Committee, which you may want to listen to. It's complicated from reading the documents, but the meeting may give some clarification.
Okay, thank you. We have one more questioner online, Mike Lefrancois.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to add, I guess, or reiterate some of the trail questions and the transit questions that came up. Yeah, certainly the connection between Incline Village and Kings Beach. I mean, there's bicycles going very slow now through Crystal Bay, and people are doing it anyway. It's way unsafe. You know, the sooner we can get a connection between those two communities, I think it would be a drastic improvement to safety. A long-standing gap in town on a trail system would be along Incline Way from the bowling alley down to the rec center. I know it's been discussed for probably at least 20 years, and I think that's a maybe lower hanging fruit, you know, financially, if that section get completed. That actually would also continue down through Village Green. I mean, there's no connection down to Lakeshore, I guess, unless you're taking like Village Boulevard, which of course is really steep and already under pressure. Southwood came up a couple times, and having lived there for several years, I see plenty of it. You know, that intersection, Southwood and Village, I think it's a speed issue. You know, you stop, you wait for a gap in traffic, you go, and these cars are just coming right down on you. So I think the cars coming down Village are going way too fast. I don't know if signs or anything going to stop it. You know, it's a steep hill, so people are just coming down fast. So, you know, is a four-way stop a possible solution? I don't know. And then on Southwood itself, you know, there's a residential zone that carries through from along Southwood from Village to Maze, and I see some traffic coming through there. It might go a long ways. It's can be a drag strip, you know, late in the evening from what I've seen. What else here? Oh, it hasn't come up, but you know, Diamond Peak parking lot. You know, there's an opportunity there, or at least perhaps for local residents to park their boats, maybe solve some of the other issues we're seeing here. You know, there's different feelings on that, but I'm sure the upcoming IVGIT board might be open to having that conversation. You know, we have a lot of pressures here, and that's just sits empty all summer long. I think it's a permit issue. Perhaps the county can help in allowing a special use there in the summertime. And in general, you know, transit, I have family that lives in the region. They can't get here on transit. You know, some of them don't have vehicles. I'd love for them to be able to come into town using transit and, you know, save me having to go do a pickup. I think that'd be a great improvement. Thank you.
All right, would you like to close with anything else, Dave?
There are a few, thank you, by the way, for the record, Dave Sawyer. There are a few questions that are in the chat. One of the things I do want to make sure that the community understands is that the transportation plan is available on the website, and it answers many of those questions, specifically which pathways we're talking about and those types of things. So I'll make sure I just tried to put the link in the chat, and it's giving me an error message. So I'll work with Alex. We'll get to get the link there. But as far as, you know, numbers of cars and things like that as well, there were some questions about, you know, where are the cars, where, you know, what numbers there are. I've been working with the sheriff's office. The sheriff's been working with NDOT on providing some information. And so I'm hopeful to be able to start capturing some of that information as far as like, where are the cars going when they come into town, whether they're coming in on Mount Rose Highway, whether they're coming in from Sand Harbor, whether they're leaving the Sand Harbor. So we're really trying to get additional information there. So all of that is, is a part of the decision-making process as we start going through some of these things. I will follow up with TTD and others on some of those items. And I really appreciate your taking my request seriously to provide some of those, some of the information that you provided tonight. And then obviously anytime in the near future on kind of the priorities for the community, to Ms. Becker's point, lots of different priorities in the basin, lots of different thoughts around who should be prioritizing what, but Washoe County is here to understand the needs of our residents. And that's what I'm here to do.
Okay. And I cheated. I had you close and then I remembered I have an important question I wanted to ask. So Roxana Dunn, for the record, so one of the complaints I have heard is that we see glossy plans and we don't see the projects. What are the steps that happen between the finalization of the glossy plan, which we provide input to, so we are involved there, but then everything goes into, from our perspective, a black hole. So what are the steps? Who's involved? When does it happen? Is there a time of year where planning is focused? And is there any way that we can be involved at that point in time?
Sure. For the record, Dave Solero, yeah, the last thing we want to do is spend money on a plan that sits on a shelf and doesn't get any, any benefit to the community. So I think, one of the first steps that you've taken is to have me come up a few times to talk through the plan and kind of where we're at and some of those things. You'll notice in the information provided to the CAB, all of the red updates in that plan. I try to update the, kind of where we're at every 6 months for myself to make sure that we are making some progress on those things and understanding. And when you and I spoke, one of the things I need to do is be able to prioritize some of the work that Washoe County engineers or planners or grant writers are working on. And so, I think the first step is to make sure that you're still interested in seeing improvements in the community. Certainly, if you see something in the community and you question whether it's a part of the plan or if you have questions about why things are done the way they are, certainly our 311 call takers, they know how to get in touch with me. They sit right outside my door. They are always coming in my office asking me questions about kind of where to get the information to be able to provide to residents asking questions. So I think just being active and engaged in your community and understanding that there is a plan really helps me keep focused on providing, updates and information. It's hard to, do a plan and know that there are projects that are in the plan without a funding source. And so that's a lot of the work that I try to do is identify the funding source and go after the funding, to be able to put these things together, get it in the plans, to be able to do that. It's a full-time job to try to keep up with all of the different things that are out there.
Is there a specific, I'm sorry, Roxana Dunn, interrupting. Is there a specific time of year where you sort of lay out what next year's projects are going to be?
We go through a capital improvement planning process, generally starts December, January, February. That's the planning process where we look at all of the projects that Washoe County will be delivering to all of the residents where, depending on where they are. That's really the time to try to make sure we understand what the workload of the group is for all the projects that have been approved and funded and which ones we're going to go after and chase funding for. And it kind of puts it through there. So it's really December, January, February, where we're trying to do that planning piece.
And one last question, are there any projects on this list that you can point to that have been accomplished?
Let me go back to my list here. As part of the update. As far as fully accomplished, I think that not fully accomplished, but certainly the local roadways and intersections, that was a concern that the community had. We've got different options within the plan. We are nearly complete with getting a full year's data of use of those intersections. So specifically it's Village at Southwood, Village at Northwood. Those are the two that we really studied trying to get the information, number of cars, number of pedestrians, time of year, time of day, all of that data. Because as you'll recall in the plan, there were 3 different options. There was a 4-way stop. There was realigning with paint. There was I think a roundabout in there. We wanted to be able to gather the yearly data to understand really what is the best approach, because at the same time, we are also governed by the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. We can't just put up stop signs unless they're warranted, because it creates another issue where if a driver, I see this in my neighborhood every day, doesn't believe that that stop sign is warranted and they just drive through it, that is a huge issue. And so sometimes so there are counts that are required. And so we go through all of that, but we've almost got nearly the entire data for those 2 intersections to be able to make good improvements and suggestions to community on which is. So I would say those 2 are the ones that are furthest along as far as having the data to really make a good improvement to the community.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And we'd like to have you back in a year or so, and we'd like you to say, we did this, this, and this.
I would like to do that as well.
You would, I know you would. So,
Very much.
Thank you so much.
it's always great. All right, so thank you to everybody who participated in that. Kat Oakley, are you still awake? And let's go to item number 7, which is the Tahoe area plan. So I guess it is due for new updates, and Kat is going to talk us through that process. We actually had a brief version of that, I think, in June. But hopefully at this point, Kat, you can put actual dates on some of the steps. So
I can. That's what I'm
Oakley's
here
in
to
the
do.
Planning department.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I'm Kat Oakley with the Washoe County Planning Department. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I was hoping to make it up there in person, but I am not as brave as Dave to take on Mount Rose Highway at night. So happy
Yeah.
to be here digitally. I'm gonna just share a brief presentation. And if somebody could confirm that you can see that.
Yes.
Okay,
There we go.
awesome. So we're just gonna, this is an introduction, kind of the kickoff for the 2025 Tahoe Area Plan update. And so the intent of this presentation is to provide a high-level overview of the scope of this update, the anticipated timeline, and then the opportunities that they're gonna be for engagement along the way. And so just to start with a little background, I'm sure you guys all know this, but to ground us in where we're at, the Tahoe Area Plan was adopted in 2021. That was its original adoption after extensive public outreach to formulate this vision for the future of the community. And it actually serves as the master plan for the Tahoe area in Washoe County, so for Incline Village and Crystal Bay. And that master plan is the guiding document for the future of land use and development. That is kind of that 30,000-foot view that we as planners use to frame and to organize our work. And one thing that's really unique about Tahoe and about the Tahoe area plan in terms of our work is that Article 220 and 220.1 of the development code, which we would generally call the Tahoe modifiers, are actually adopted as appendices to the Tahoe area plan. So it's in a sense part of the master plan. And that's really significant because that means that to update our code that's applicable to Tahoe, just kind of our zoning code, it has to go through that whole regional master plan update process. And so it is a much more extensive process than we generally go through to update our development code for other parts of the county. And so that is really significant in terms of what will be included in this update and why it is important to kind of look at those aspects of the development code that need some maintenance as we're opening up the Tahoe area plan. So I'm sure the question you're all wondering is, why is this update happening now? What's it all about? What's driving it? And one of the main things that is driving it is the Phase 2 housing amendments that TRPA adopted in 2023. There were some changes that had to do with creating incentives for deed-restricted, affordable, multifamily style development and deed-restricted, affordable, moderate, and attainable, I believe, development. And so those amendments that they did have to do with things like coverage, height, and parking. But sometimes when TRPA does updates, they don't require a local jurisdiction to take any action or make any changes to our regulations. But in this case, the phase 2 housing amendments do necessitate amendments to the Washoe County Code. And as I just said, our code is part of our master plan. And so there's the need to open up the Tahoe area plan to come into conformance with the TRPA changes, and to do so in a timely manner. We have to come into conformance with the regional plan. And so that's really the catalyst for this update. It's why we're doing it now, and it's why we're doing it on the timeline we're doing it on, which I'll go over in a minute. But since we are opening up the Tahoe area plan, like I said, it is a rather extensive process on a regional level to get it updated. And so we do want to make some changes based on lessons learned from the implementation of the plan and of the code since 2021, and make some identified potential code improvements as much as we can while opening this area plan. And so just to give a taste of, what sorts of things might that be? For example, some of our use tables are structured in such a way that it's not clear if the special area allowed uses are cumulative with those for just the general zoning district or totally separate. There's a typo. It's kind of meaningful in the description of our use tables. So that's one type of thing where it's kind of cleanup work like that to make sure our code is clear and usable. There are some other things as well, like for example, there are some residential regulatory zones in the Tahoe area that require a special use permit for single family residences when a single family residences is the primary developed use on the ground. So we're requiring an SUP for the typical use in the area. That came from a potential avalanche risk in those areas, but I think as we've been working with this regulation over the last few years, there's recognition that might not be the best strategy for approaching that, of requiring a special use permit for a use that is the intended use for that area. So things like that we want to fix and improve while we're going through this regional process. And so it really is a focus update. It's not rehashing the vision established in the 2021 plan. The community and Washoe County went through a lot of work to establish that vision. It's comprehensive. It's pretty recent. And so this isn't about that. It's about doing what we can to implement it and making sure that our code is usable, it's clear, and it's serving its purpose. And so here's just a little graphic that hopefully is of a high enough quality to see that summarizes these two buckets of the scope. So that regional plan conformance, coming into conformance with the TRPA changes, and then implementation where we can of those housing related policies, and then those identified code fixes to make those improvements to our development code while we're going through a regional level process. And so to talk a little bit about what that process is going to be, again, it's not rehashing the vision. It's it's much more focused, and its goal is to fulfill that need to quickly come into conformance with recent TRPA amendments. And so to be concrete about that, the goal is to do that by the end of 2025. And so the public outreach process really has two focuses, or at least this is how I like to think about it in organizing my thoughts. So one is transparency and clarity, making sure that the community knows and everybody knows what's being proposed, the opportunities for engagement, how that engagement was taken into consideration, and how to have a voice in the process. And so that's kind of focus one. And then focus two is, of course, having the result be high quality code and policy. And what I mean by that is that it's clear, it's understandable by all, that we all read it and we get the same thing out of it, and that it is implementable. And so we've got this focus scope in order to meet the timeline, and also just to be able to accomplish it and get it done on the timeline that we're envisioning with the resources that we've got. So here is a graphic showing that timeline more specifically. Right now we're in phase one, the kickoff phase. So this is that kickoff meeting where we're introducing this to the community. They're going to be announced soon, and so keep an eye out for an email on this. A couple of pop-up events, as we're calling them, and really what that is just times when a planner, myself, and others will be in the community in places where people already like to go, and just there to have informal discussions about the Tahoe area plan, where we're available to talk through people's thoughts on the area plan, on the update, to answer questions and things of that sort. So again, kind of an informal thing, just to have boots on the ground, and also try to be in some locations where people already like to go, so that we can spread awareness that the amendments are happening. Early next year, we're going to be doing the drafting to give us all something concrete to talk about in phase 2, which is really going to be the more hefty public outreach phase. It's where there's going to be a draft published, the online opportunity to provide input, and more traditional kind of workshop style events where we can sit down and talk about the proposed language. Based on that outreach, we'll do some revisions before we move into phase 3, which is the neighborhood meeting, where we're going to come back, report on that, provide that final draft, report on what we heard during the public outreach, how that was incorporated, and then move into the public hearing process. The beginning of that public hearing process, it starts with our planning commission and with the regional plan implementation committee, or RPIC, and then it also goes through our board of county commissioners and through a number of regional boards. So that process alone, just the public hearings, actually takes about 6 months. And so that's why we are aiming to start it towards the middle of next year. So that is just a very broad overview. This is, like I said, the beginning of the process. So please feel free to reach out to me directly at any time if you want to talk about this, and I'm here and happy to answer any questions you all have now.
Okay, thank you, Kat. So we'll start with the cab, Diane.
Diane Becker, thank you for your presentation, but I was hoping we could hear from you right now. What are the fixes that you're thinking about, and what are the specific requirements that TARPA's putting on you that are going to be in there, so that we can start thinking about them now? We're not as interested. I mean, the timeline was great. We could have had one slide on it, but what we'd really like to know is what are the fixes and what are the proposed changes?
Yeah, so to start with, Kat Oakley for the record, to start with the TRPA required changes. So we need to essentially modify our code to align with what they adopted for the package 2 housing amendments. And like I said, that is incentives having to do specifically for deed restricted multifamily development in certain areas. So in town centers, in areas where multifamily is allowed, and basically in preferred affordable areas, incentives having to do with coverage, which we actually won't need to touch because that's in the hands of TRPA, with height, so with maximum height, and then with parking. So in that case, what we need to do is make our regulation mirror what they adopted. In terms of the code fixes,
Wait, Diane, can I ask you a question though before we go to that? It is my understanding from TARPA that the city of South Lake Tahoe has adopted more protective regulations in some areas, and that the than the TARPA plan. So isn't it true we could look at what they're doing, but we can be more protective of our community than accepting everything blanket? Isn't that true?
Kat Oakley, Washoe County Planning. So yes, TRPA, they either require you to adopt exactly what they've adopted, or to adopt something that you have demonstrated is more effective in pursuing their end goal. And in this case, the end goal is the creation of more deed restricted, affordable, attainable, moderate housing. So there's that option provided to local jurisdictions, but the kind of key there is that we have to prove to them that it will be more effective. And that is, as you can imagine, very resource intensive. And so it's an option they provide to local jurisdictions. It's a much more resource intensive option.
Diane Becker, I just want to go on into that just a little more. So, but it is my understanding that we can do that. So do we have an ability to get a commitment from you, or at least from the county, that you're going to look at that and not, because when you say it's more expensive in terms of making the showing, I mean, I'm aware of some of the differences that they have adopted. And those differences would be much better for our area. And I don't think any of us would like if you just say it's too expensive to look into alternatives. So, I mean, are you going to look into alternatives, or do you have a budget to do that?
Cat Oakley, Washoe County Planning. I'm hoping Trevor Lloyd, who's on, is maybe knows more about budget than me, can address that.
Okay, we're waiting for Trevor.
Yeah, hi, I'm starting my video. Hi, everyone. This is Trevor Lloyd. I'm planning manager with Washoe County. And I think Kat laid out the process fairly well. We do have, we do have limited resources. It's something we can certainly look at. We're a little reluctant, though, to really start expanding the scope with the understanding that we do need to get some of these changes and amendments adopted as quickly as we possibly can. I know that we do have a limited budget. For example, some of the amendments will require contracting with local consultants that are far more knowledgeable and aware of the TRPA process and the environmental considerations. And so we do have some budget, but again, it is limited. We can certainly look into some of the requests that you're asking for now in relation to the housing amendments, with the understanding, though, that we really are bound by many of TRPA's restrictions and regulations. Also with us, I believe, is Eric Young. He's our senior planner, and he's also far more knowledgeable in this regard. He was a primary lead with the last area plan update. And I don't know, Eric, if you wanted to add anything as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry, I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. I apologize. I'm Eric Young, Washoe County Planning. I also am a member of the Advisory Planning Commission, which is the TRPA Planning Commission, which reviews all of the other basins amendments, all the other basin jurisdiction amendments. So it's not only Washoe County, it is launching into some amendments to adopt the Phase 2 housing changes that TRPA did. And indeed, Southlake has proposed some differences. Those differences were not all adopted. And let's remember that those differences they have to be able to show that they are fulfilling the goal of the TRPA's desired outcome to a greater degree than TRPA standards would. So they propose things like greater height and greater density. And the Advisory Planning Commission was okay with those, but so far the governing board has not been okay with those. Those are going to be looked at separately now. So there are some opportunities to do more, so to speak. The extra time involved is the time required to prove to TRPA that your proposal will result in a greater housing outcome than the code that they've already adopted. And so the way to do that is through things like greater height and greater density. And so if you would like us to come and talk to you about things like, greater height and greater density, we can include that. And in January, when we come back and start doing some of the early outreach to the community, we can certainly include that option, to do more, to try and achieve more deed restricted housing units through some other method. To be honest, I'm not sure how well the community would accept a proposal like greater density. But we could try things like that. There are a variety of things that could potentially result in a better outcome than TRPA's proposed changes. However, our original scope of the situation and our understanding of what TRPA has already adopted suggests to us that the right thing for our community at this point is probably to do what they have requested and to keep data on it. I mean, I really enjoyed the discussion tonight about how important data is. We love to hear that, even when people argue about it. We like to listen to it. So if the community tells us through the outreach process that you want to do more, then we'll provide those proposals in the drafts. And we can certainly let people know through the outreach process that that is an option. But our original or first blush approach to it is that doing what TRPA has suggested and then seeing how well that goes, seeing what happens, and coming back around and saying, well, that didn't really accomplish anything, we need to do more, is an approach that I would advocate. But if the community up there says you want to try and do more right away, that's what the draft will reflect.
Roxana Dunn, and I would like to aim this question back at Kat. Kat, were you present when Diane and I gave our presentation to the Washoe County staff, Eric Brown's staff, in April about our issues? Were you there?
Kat Oakley, no, I was not.
Okay. One of the topics that we addressed was workforce housing. I'm going to speak for myself at this point because I can't speak for the whole community, but I certainly recognize the need for workforce housing back down here and am supportive of proposals that would get us some help in that regard. Our issues that we brought up in April, and that I would suggest we might want to have a meeting with you and go over these again, was that there are some holes in the TRPA code amendments that we feel the housing might not wind up being workforce housing. It might just be 5-story condominiums for people who can afford expensive condominiums. Our issue is not putting up workforce housing. And again, I'm speaking for myself. I know there's some people in the community who probably would be not happy about it. But it's not the putting up workforce housing. It's seeing that the workforce housing projects are shanghaied over into something else. We totally understand. Again, I totally understand the developers that are buying land here have a very difficult time making a profit when they're building lower cost housing. And so the driver here is let's build expensive condominiums. Anyway, I'd like to suggest that maybe we follow up with you with a meeting and kind of go over those complaints. I see a couple of hands up online that I know are very well versed in those areas, so I'm going to let them talk to them more specifically. Anyone else on the cab? Denise?
Denise Davis. Kat, I guess this question's for you, but it may be for Trevor or for Eric. So we have been told.
You can't hear.
Denise Davis, can you hear me now, Rhonda?
Thank you.
All right, Kat, this may be for you or it may be for Trevor or for Eric. So we have long heard that the county zoning applies to everything in the county. We can't have special zoning for different areas. And so we're noticing and watching all of these discussions about ADUs and the proposals for decreasing the requirement for at least an acre for an ADU to be put on. And so I don't know if that's part of what the TRPA is pushing for now, but is that still the case that if the county decides that an ADU can be put on a lot that is less than an acre, then would the cycle continue that, oh, then we next time need to amend our Tahoe area plan to include that, and thus we get ADUs on smaller and smaller and smaller parcel sizes?
Cat Oakley, Washoe County Planning, great question. So yes, TRPA has already made the change to allow ADUs to be on parcels smaller than an acre. Right now, Washoe County Code requires an acre, but that ADU discussion is intended to be part of these amendments as well. So that kind of, it's been enabled now. Our code remains the same, and it's not like with housing package 2, or the phase 2 amendments, excuse me, where we are mandated to do something, right now. But it's a conversation that we want to have as part of the housing discussion in this update.
Okay, anyone else on the cab?
Oh, we didn't.
I'm sorry.
Yes, on this, I'm sorry, Diane Becker, the other thing, Kat, was the fixes. We didn't get into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Cat Oakley, Washoe County Planning. So there were the couple I mentioned, like the special use permit for the houses in single family neighborhoods. Some like type organization stuff in some of our use tables so that there's visual clarity on what they mean. There are some other things. For example, we currently, there's a way that you can have encroachment into the front yard setback on steeply sloped lots. There's a provision in our code that has a process to allow that. And right now the process is different for an attached garage versus a detached garage. And so we think it'd be an improvement to align those processes more. So that would be included in this. And this is all things that once the draft is put together, it will be put out to the community, and we will talk through the details because we know the details are important. And maybe we'll have the conversation and everybody will say, there really should be 2 different processes. But this is something that we've identified in implementing the code that's worth talking about. Another thing is it's kind of become clear that we regulate temporary uses in a way that's different from how TRPA regulates them, and that's not always compatible, such that there might be a situation where they would authorize a temporary use and we wouldn't. And that's, that's confusing for people who are trying to do the temporary uses. It's confusing for us. And so looking at something to resolve that, and that's an example of something where it's an identified issue right now, and we don't know the fix yet or the solution, but that's part of what we're going to be exploring in the drafting, and then of course talking to you all about. So that's a pretty good, I would say, spread of what's going to be looked at. There are some other things, and often as you're reading the code, it's kind of like, oh yeah, this doesn't really make sense, and we could change that. So it will evolve as the draft evolves, but it's those types of things. And in a lot of cases, I would say it's kind of the technical things that a technical user of the code notices as they're trying to use it. So I hope that provides a little more concreteness at this stage. And of course, it'll get more concrete as we go along.
Diane Becker, Kat, thank you. That does provide us quite a bit of information. I noticed you didn't say anything about the definition of or requiring of space for commercial businesses that are being driven out on Tahoe Boulevard. We have the bulk of our little businesses are on Tahoe Boulevard, and because of the very broad definition that's being used of commercial and versus public space that they're allowed to substitute, we are losing people. We've lost our locksmith, we've lost one of our cleaners, and we now have one left. And the little businesses are talking about going out of business on Tahoe Boulevard. So if you're looking at amending the Tahoe area plan and you're only looking at what Tarpon needs, I hope you'll look at what we need. And one of the things is some way to keep space for the commercial businesses. When the commercial businesses are being driven out in the Christmas Tree Village or at the Raleigh Shopping Center, we at least need to know that some percentage of the space is going to be devoted to commercial. Otherwise, there will be, this will just be a tourist town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chris, can we keep it short?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there, and I address this to Kat and any of the other planners, is there a time limit on when these amendments must be adopted?
Kat Oakley, so
Chris Wood, by the way, cab member, sorry about that.
no worries. TRPA has not given us a date where they've said, we're gonna do XYZ if it's not adopted by the state. But here's what they have been clear about, and what is clear is that we need to come into conformance and work with them to do so, or they will come into conformance for us. And so that's why we are looking at getting this done rather quickly. This was adopted in 2023. As you all have brought up, a lot of the other local jurisdictions have already been either started or are working through their processes to come into conformance. And so there's been no external specific date on the calendar, but there is the need to do it quickly.
All right, thank you. I'd like to finish with the cab there. So anyone in the room have a comment here? All right, online, Pam?
Yes, I'd like to make it abundantly clear to Kat and Trevor and Eric that it was exactly 1 year ago this week that TRPA passed Phase 2 amendments, and they did it against the overall overwhelming concern raised by communities around the entire lake, from Nevada to California, that these Phase 2 amendments were not necessarily in the interest of workforce housing. They were in the interest of luxury condo developers. TRPA ignored the residents around the lake who truly would like to see workforce housing put in place. I really would urge, Kat, you and others at Washoe County to not be steamrolled by TRPA. Washoe County has its own standalone jurisdiction and authority. As our representatives, we beg you to please ensure that you are not forced to stick to a timeline that does not serve our communities. It is critical that you apply the very important expert thinking that is needed to ensure that what is approved by Washoe County indeed serves the communities here in Tahoe, Washoe. I would really encourage you to take another look at restricting short-term rentals. That would immediately open up workforce housing. I would highly encourage you to restrict fast-tracking anything that does not ensure that there's deed-restricted housing. Please do not be completely bowled over by a large agency that has consistently proven that it does not listen to the residents because they are 100% focused on how to put Tahoe as a destination to global audiences. It's really critical that you not undermine the communities. You are our representatives, Kat, Eric, and Trevor. Please do not sell out our community. I thank you.
All right, thank you. Kathy Julian.
Thank you. And I would like to reinforce what Pamela has just commented on. This was an exceedingly complex issue, the housing amendments, exceedingly complex. And as much as, and at the time, we kept telling the TRPA and the county, you're making changes essentially to the Tahoe area plan. without having the proper dialogue and consultation with the community that the Tahoe Area Plan approved in 2021 did have. And so we were concerned that some of these changes flew in the face of the vision of the Tahoe Area Plan as convened and discussed by the community back then, before COVID. Now I'm hearing people say that this is merely just checking the boxes, that we have to, it's not about the vision of the Tahoe Area Plan. We're just checking to make sure that all of our code is in line with what this TRPA has done. But what has been lost here is the overall vision. The TRPA with these housing amendments did change the vision, and that was done without proper consultation with the broader community, as a Tahoe Area Plan deserved. So I would urge, Kat, you are a wonderful staff person of Washoe County, and you are very conscientious. I would urge you to, and Trevor, who I also have great admiration for, I would urge you to really factor in what the community is thinking in terms of that vision. In my view, I'm fully supportive of workforce housing, very supportive of it. But in my view, we passed up an opportunity to have a balance of carrot and stick in the Tahoe Area Plan amendments. It is all carrot. And I do not believe that we will get the workforce housing that we deserve out of all of these carrots that we're giving to the developers and the realtors and so forth. And my concern is that we have a plan here that is measured and that we can see whether we're actually getting the results we want, and that we don't end up through the redevelopment of existing old complexes. We end up losing our small businesses because they can't. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And Trevor Lloyd?
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate all your comments. I think they're very valid. I did want to remind the CAB that there was a recent amendment. This is relating to short-term rentals and how they may affect workforce housing. We did recently amend the STR ordinance to restrict the use of any new ADUs for the purpose of short-term rentals. And I know there is certainly there is a strong appetite amongst many residents of Incline Village and Crystal Bay to limit short-term rentals. Again, that issue would have to be raised with our commissioners who did that was brought before them last year, and they decided not to restrict short-term rentals, but we did have quite a discussion with the commission at that time.
All right, thank you, Trevor. Since that commissioner meeting, Diane and Chris and I have met with each of the 5 commissioners individually and plighted our case about STRs and made the point that we are the only area of the lake left that does not have any kind of restriction on STR or any kind of cap or limitation on STRs. So, and 89%, and this is old data, so it's probably 90-something% now, of the available permits in the other parts of the lake have been consumed. We are going to be a target for developers, and it's still important. So I just want, pardon my passion here, but I just want to let you know that the commissioners are failing us on this, and we have explained that to them. We would like to see it brought before them again. So there I'm using the royal we again, but forgive me. All right. Anything else on this particular topic, Kat? thank you for being brave enough to come and talk to us. I would like to suggest that we have a meeting. I'll send you an email and we can talk about how appropriate that is or whatever. I don't want to circumvent general public inputs, but I think we do want to ensure that you understand the TRPA amendments, the code changes that they're making, and how we think that they can be abused, and are quite concerned about that. So if we can address that, that would be great. I think that's it for this topic. Let's move on then to Neighborhood Hub. And so back to you, Alexandra.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone see me all right and hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
We can hear
Okay,
you.
perfect. Let me just reclaim the host real quick. Okay, perfect. So I'm going over the Neighborhood Development Hub. Let me pull up my screen so you guys can see what I'm looking at. So I have two updates today. The first is actually a meeting that took place this evening at 6 o'clock. I believe I spoke about it last month, but it's in regards to Sky Tavern Trails for District 1 on 10,000 Mount Rose Highway. It's in regards to the mountain bike trails that are up there, expanding those and future networks. If you guys weren't able to attend, that's no problem. We ask that they record those meetings and you can submit feedback at any time. And if anyone has questions, I can show you how to do that. The other is on December 18th. So this Thursday, I believe, Wednesday, Article 610 update for all districts. If you click into this item, it will give you more details on what Article 610 is. It has to do with final subdivision maps, and they give you a pretty quick bulleted list of what all of those updates are. But as of right now, those are the only two meetings that I have. Does anyone have any questions?
All right, thank you. Let's go on to approving the minutes. Woo! Our favorite topic.
I move that we approve the minutes for September 23rd and October 14th, 2024.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And I'd like to just add one thing in case you didn't say it. Alexandra, the minutes are wonderful, the way it worked out really well. And I want to thank Chris for all the work that he does coordinating any comments.
Yes. Yes, I also wanted to thank both of you for the extraordinary effort to get us back up to date. So we are now normal. What can I say? Chris?
Yes, so I hate to go into the sausage factory, Chris Wood, for the cab. But Alexander, who is, or how are those minutes being developed? Is a person doing it? Is a machine, a well-learned machine doing it? What's going on here?
So it's a combination. We found, so one of the things that we had struggled with and is we had a lot of turnover in staff in the recent years. So we had about 4 staff members in the role of doing minutes over the last year. And so we struggled with the consistency as well as the timeliness of some of the minutes, not just with Incline, but with others. And so what we found is a combination of AI as well as a staff member going back and going through and making sure the information was correct. We have transcripts for each of the cabs that we use to go along. And so I do believe it is the dedication of our staff members that make sure that we get everything correct, because AI cannot be perfect all the time. But it certainly helps in condensing the time it does to produce the minutes. So it's been a great learning experience, and luckily we're on the better half of minute production. So hopefully it'll continue on.
Chris Wood, again, I just want to sing the praises of whoever it is that's reviewing those AI transcripts and providing these documents. I'm amazed at how well they capture the topics and get things correct. Nothing's perfect. That's why we always have senior partners who review things before they get published. But you know, it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Roxana Dunn, for the record, I see that Mark Sasway, who's online, voted to approve the minutes. So it is a 5-0 vote. All right, let's go on to item 10, board announcements. I'll start by asking Alexandra, do we have January set up yet? The January cab agenda?
I don't believe we do quite yet, although I do have someone booked in March, so we're skipping around here. We have Placemate that is booked in March in regards to their rental. I forgot the description of it. But it seems like some of you have heard of it.
Right.
And so they will be coming in March to talk about their 1 month launch of that program. As soon as I get the speakers for January, we have been reaching out to Senator Krasner to see if she can present, although now we've offered February and March. Manager Brown will be, actually, I do have one speaker. Manager Brown will be around potentially in January to present on the 2024 Washoe County accomplishments, similar to what he did last year for 2023. So expect that coming up on the agenda, if not more speakers.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm trying very hard to push to get the agendas set up 1 month in advance so that we can announce them at the meetings. I apologize, I failed this month, but we are still working in that direction. So thank you for your help on that, Alexandra. Any other board announcements? Chris?
Yes. Chris Wood from the board, actually, cab member. The Incline Village Crystal Bay Community Business Association, sometimes known as IVCBA, has a housing committee. It's going to host a series of meetings to engage the community in shaping local workforce housing solutions. This committee is not going to tell the community what they should do. It's going to invite speakers to come and tell us what they have done. So we'll have knowledgeable speakers that will present approaches taken by similar mountain communities and local experts that will ground us in housing opportunities and challenge us and challenges in our region. The idea is to get everybody to come and participate in the speaker series. The first of the meetings will be January 23 at 6 p.m. in the Prim Library at UNR. It's scheduled for just an hour. Everybody is sworn to keep it to an hour so we can all get home and finish dinner. There'll be an opportunity to attend online. More details about this event and the Housing Committee are on the IVCBA website, which is conveniently ivcba.org. We hope you join us. And there will be other meetings after that. The first one, by the way, I shouldn't overlook this, is Chase Janvrin from Placemates. Placemates, no S on the end, which is the program that will be discussed at the CAB in March here as well, which is a rental housing program. It's an idea to get housing that's not being used, which is about half the housing in town here when the owners are away, and to find a way to unlock it. And that will be discussed on the 23rd of January at 6 p.m. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Denise Davis?
Not an announcement, more of a question, since we were discussing our calendar. So tonight we were asked to help provide feedback regarding several different topics. So when we're asked to do that, are we envisioning that the CAB is going to function as an intermediary? And if we are, then where are we calendaring that at?
Chris Wood.
Chris?
Thanks.
Thank you.
If I may pose the question to Denise, are you suggesting we have time set aside to discuss some of these matters that come up before the board?
Denise Davis, I'm just asking how are we, not just we, but if we're functioning as an intermediary for our community, how are we going to do that? You know, we've been asked to provide feedback. If it's not on our calendar, how are we providing feedback? Other than individually, which doesn't, you know, necessarily represent the community.
Diane Becker?
So what I envisioned when I suggested that is that we do the same thing on actually both of these topics, but particularly the Tahoe Transportation Plan, since we know they will be developing basically their capital expense budget in January and February. I think it would be very good for us to have a meeting, have everyone think about in advance what their thoughts are, do our same list like we've done twice before, and make get together a presentation that we make. And while it will take some CAB members committing some time to do it, I think it's very useful.
Okay, Denise Davis, I'm not promoting another presentation. I'm saying,
I was saying the same kind of, that we write a letter and we combine it all.
okay, I guess I'm envisioning more of if they want community feedback, then I am suggesting that we have an item on our agenda for the community to provide its feedback on topics. And we don't need to compile, we don't need to do anything. We just need to have their comments reflected, perhaps word for word, and passed along to those folks who were asking for feedback.
Roxana, Denise, I'm not understanding how that's different from what transpired tonight.
Denise Davis, I'm hearing us discuss our calendar, but I'm not hearing that we're going to have those items on each agenda in January, February, March. I'm hearing about speakers, but I'm not hearing about us specifically saying we want to have an agenda item every month regarding feedback.
I'm not saying that either, but what I'm saying is we have finally an opportunity. No one realistically is going to read a book, which is basically what the minutes are. Single line bullet points on these issues or a short succinct paragraph is something they'll read. It shouldn't come from just the CAB members. It should be from all of the, if everyone gives their input, we can actually give them input as a CAB, or we can sit here and basically have it continue on where no one is really getting anything. None of the commissioners are seeing anything that we talk about, maybe except for possibly Commissioner Hill. The other commissioners are too busy to read it. So, but if we write a succinct letter, I wrote a succinct letter summarizing, I wrote the bullet points up there, I summarized it. We sent it in as these are bullet points that people have raised, and at least one of the other commissioners reached out. So the only way that I think you get anywhere is if you write something, if it's short and that, people can look at quickly. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. So Roxana, done. And that was the letter that you put together based on input from CAB meetings and a couple of emails, as I remember,
And I had
regarding evacuation, correct?
Yes,
And
yes.
that was sent to the county commissioners and also to Kelly Echeverria. And okay, whatever. And actually, I know, at the summer picnic thing, the person who was representing the county had been given that email by Kelly to read and understand our situation. So that is one possibility. And Alexandra, I'm going to ask you to chime in as well on if this is okay. But one thing is to have an agenda item where we allow people to brainstorm and submit things that we then do sort of compile in the sense that we put all the like things together and submit it as a succinct letter to all 5 of the commissioners and maybe whoever else in the county is appropriate. So that is a possibility. Is that what you are asking for? Or would you be okay that that addresses what you have seen as a missing element?
Denise Davis, yes, I am requesting at least for the next 3 meetings, January, February, and March. We have an agenda item where the public can comment and provide the feedback that they were requested to provide.
Diane Becker, I think that's an excellent recommendation.
Okay, Alexandra, have you followed all of that? And we have done this in the past, so I'm going to assume that it's okay to do it. We have an agenda item, which is a brainstorm session on a particular topic, like maybe we take the Tahoe transportation plan and pick out 1 or 2 of the various items and focus on that. And then we compile, I'm sure Denise is volunteering to do this. We compile a letter that we send into to the county commissioners. Is that okay?
Yeah, I would just caution that making sure that agenda item, and I can work with you, Roxana, that it's not open-ended necessarily, that it's very specific on what type of feedback you're looking for. So if it's in regards to the Tahoe area plan, it's not just a generalized item. Just because we want everyone who has an opinion on it to have the ability to speak. And then we can do it for however many meetings it takes. Could take 2, could take 7. I know for the evacuation letter, I believe it took, or I mean for the presentation to the Board of County Commissioners, that one took about a year or so of consistent meetings. So, I mean, however long it takes, and again, we can kind of touch month by month if we need to continue that feedback trail. And then once you guys decide on a list of topics or a succinct letter that you guys can approve, we can certainly do that.
Okay, Roxana Dunn here. I would like to move that we look at our concerns about the Tahoe area plan in January.
He's going to be budgeting in January, February.
She's going to be changing everything in March.
Well,
Okay, so I'm sorry, we're having a little private
whatever.
conversation up here.
You're the chair. You direct it.
Okay, I think we can deal with that a little bit later. So I would, so again, I am moving that we put an agenda item on January to have a brainstorm session about our input for the Tahoe area plan, in particular as regards the TRPA amended codes.
Okay. There doesn't need to be a motion or a second or anything. It's captured and
Okay.
we can put it on the agenda.
Okay. I'm asking to put it on the agenda so that I can do that. All right. Everybody okay with
noted.
that? Just, for the sun. Okay. And then in February, we'll look at the transportation plan and we'll pick out 1 or 2 specific things that we'd like to focus on there. Okay.
Can I add a final comment? Denise Davis, just a reminder that the purpose of the agenda item is to get community feedback. So I'm just going to urge CAB members to ahead of time compile their thoughts and perhaps maybe just submit those in written form so that our community has time to speak. And Alexandra, does it have to be limited to 3 minutes for a person to provide feedback or provide their thoughts?
You just went on mute, Alexandra. There.
Yeah, sorry about that. I have a little friend visiting me. No, well, we do generally limit public comment to those 3 minutes. If they're written, it's a little bit different. We don't necessarily have like a word limit count. If they were to submit those ahead of time, they become a part of the record and the minutes. So yes and no.
Okay, so Denise Davis, so if we have a community member in,
Hello.
person speaking, hello. Um, are they limited to 3 minutes if they're speaking?
Yes, a public commenter would be limited to 3 minutes. And so
Diane,
I would recommend that they do have it in writing so that anything that's not captured can go and be a part of the record, and you guys can compile that.
Diane?
no, that was what I was gonna say.
Okay, and Roxanne, I would just like to say, when we did ask for input on evacuation, we didn't get a lot of participation from the public. So, between now and January, if you would, rally, your friends and relatives and people at the community forum, et cetera, and IVCBA, to look at, what's in, to look specifically at the TRPA code changes and have their input prepared and try to get them out in January. All right, I think we've covered that, so I would like to move to general public comment at the end. Anybody left to say anything? Helen Neff.
Helen Neff, Incline Village. So just a suggestion to the cab on the transportation plan. Mr. Solaro was very specific in asking for a community output or input, not output, input on the items he had listed and the recommendations that were already made. A lot of work has already been done on that. It would seem to me that with a little bit of explanation, it's something that could possibly be done with flash vote. If that's a possibility, I think there's a good list for Incline Village of a number of people that have signed up for that. I don't know what the cost is or whether there's a budget for it. But if the different options were explained in the text of the vote, so it's very clear, people could put their priorities that way, and it might just be efficient and save a lot of time and get input from a wider range of people than the people that would show up for a meeting. Just a thought.
It would have to be very specific proposals at that point. I'm not sure we're there, but we can talk about that. Denise?
Denise Davis, just for the record, one of our cab members is the owner of Flash Vote. So I don't know if that's a conflict of interest, but just so everyone's aware.
I don't get it.
And Diane Becker, there is no budget at all to do something like that, so it would have to be something he would do at no cost, which is
Right.
relatively unfair to ask of him. I mean, it certainly could be asked, but there is no budget, so we shouldn't think about that, I think.
Commissioner funds.
Okay, thank you. Good idea. Kathy Julian.
Yeah, Kathy Julian for the record, less technologically savvy. If there can be provided some sort of simple text with links, I'd love to input requests for community feedback and participation in Nextdoor. And I think we could all do a better job of making sure that Nextdoor has reminders about these meetings and about the need for the community to be involved. And so that's just a general comment. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Roxana Dunn, just to close out, I am a little concerned that we don't have very specific proposals, even when you look at the list on the transportation plan. It says intersections. So I'm not sure exactly how much work would be involved in that, but I'm willing to sit down with somebody, Helen, and maybe some others who are particularly interested in that and come up with something. All right, any other general public comment?
Yeah, I have a public comment. I just want to read from the chat. Captain Galicia had to leave early, and so she wasn't able to relay, but she wanted to relay a message related to the question that Pamela had asked earlier on the Tomahawk Trail, or the fire related question from Pamela on the Tomahawk Trail. So she wrote that deputies were dispatched to a possible fire with updates that the structure was on fire and moving to neighbors' homes. 2 deputies were dispatched. 1 deputy closed Ski Way. The other deputy responded to the home and began doing evacuations of the surrounding homes. This would explain why not all of the surface streets were closed due to not having enough units on the scene. We began sending additional patrol deputies from the Reno area, and they began responding immediately within 10 minutes of the initial call for service. A structure fire is a very rapidly evolving call for service, and if there are immediate risks to surrounding homes, evacuations take precedence, and deputies will respond to the area in order to facilitate any evacuations. And that is all that she wrote on there.
All right, thank you for that. Just for whoever cares is listening, this is Roxana. The real concern here is probably not the hour that Pam lost trying to negotiate her way through an unfamiliar neighborhood, but just the alarm that it sets up about how vulnerable we are in terms of our crooked little streets and short-staffed emergency people to handle these kinds of things. If we get a rip-roaring fire through here, we are in trouble. All right, motion to adjourn?
I move, we adjourn.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's 5-0, and we are adjourning at 7:55.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you after the new year.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
too.
thank you, Alexander.
Thank you.
Well, some of us will see you later this week, right?
A couple days. Yeah, I'll see you soon.
So we're hoping
All right,
for
bye.
good weather. Okay.
Thanks.
This, 3 dots.